Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Delphine Adeno-Ousu, the Executive Director of EUCCAN. The EU Chamber of Commerce in Canada is an advocacy body in charge of disseminating CETA information and to support EU-Canada trade relations. If you are new here, I invite you to visit EUCCAN's website, YouTube channel, and social media to get more information on CETA and how you can benefit from it. You can also, of course, follow us on social media, Twitter and LinkedIn, and I will drop all the links later in this webinar. Until mid-December, you will get a unique opportunity to discover trade and investment opportunity in each Canadian province. Today is the 6th episode of the series with Ontario. After the two presentations we will have today, we will have the question and answer session, so please feel free to ask all your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Now, I would like to introduce our two speakers of the day. I will start with Marek, Marek Karwacki is the investment sales specialist, Europe and Asia in the Investment Outreach Unit, Foreign Direct Investment Services branch of the Trade and Investment Division at the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. And Rita Patlan, who will do the second presentation, is the Area Director, Aerospace, Defense and Security, Clean Tech and Infrastructure Europe in the International Business Growth branch of the International Representation and Promotion Division at the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. So we'll start with the Marek presentation. Over to you, Marek.
Thank you very much, Delphine. I will share my screen. Okay. Can you see?
Yes, we can see. Great.
Okay. So thank you again, and good morning and good afternoon for those in Europe to everybody. Thank you for joining us. My thanks also to EUCCAN and to Delphine for organizing this. As she said, my name is Marek Karwacki. I am with the Ontario Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Ontario. So I will start with an overview of Ontario's economy and talk a little bit about the foreign direct investment into Ontario. And then I will talk about some specific sectors that may be of interest to the participants. So to start, Ontario has a very strong economy and a very economically advantageous location. So you may know many of these facts. I will go over them. Ontario is located in the heart of North America. It has a population of 14 million people, and those people speak over 200 languages. Ontario is connected to over 150 international destinations through its transport hubs. It is the 7th largest economy in North America by GDP, and that's states and provinces. It is the 39% of Canada's population and GDP come from Ontario, as well 47% of Canada's goods are produced in Ontario, and it is home to 62% of the international head offices in Canada. So through its location, of course, within Canada, Ontario businesses have the advantage of having free trade deals with 46 countries around the world, reaching 1.7 billion consumers. And very, very important to Ontario is the fact that the daily two-way trade between Ontario and the United States is approximately $1 billion. That's every day travel between Ontario and the US in imports and exports. Finally, approximately 40% of Canada's global goods exports originate in Ontario. So just a little bit of information to give you an idea of the size of the economy. In 2018, Ontario had a GDP of 684 billion US dollars. In a European context, it puts us sort of as a medium-sized country, smaller, of course, in GDP than Poland or the Netherlands, but a bit larger than Switzerland, Belgium, Sweden. In terms of foreign direct investment and the attractiveness of Ontario, it is ranked, or it was ranked in 2019 as the #1 jurisdiction in North America as the top destination regions in terms of number of jobs created. And Toronto The city of Toronto, the capital of Ontario, in terms of metropolitan areas, was ranked #1 in North America for the number of jobs created in 2018. So to talk a little bit about foreign direct investment. So where does this investment come from? Obviously, because of our location, approximately half, just under half of the foreign direct investment comes from the United States. Just over 10% comes from Germany, 7% or 7.8% from the UK, and then you can see France, just under 6%, Switzerland, several other countries outside of Europe. In terms of sectors and where this investment goes, the #1 sector right now for foreign direct investment into Ontario is software and IT services at just over a quarter. About 1/5 of the investment is in automotive OEM. Another 9% or so is in semiconductors. And then we see other sectors are transportation, food and tobacco, pharmaceuticals, etc. Now, to get to one of the great advantages of being in Ontario is our location, of course, our proximity to the United States. So within a day's drive from Ontario, you have access to 143 million consumers. So much of the US East Coast and much of the US Midwest. So through the new version of NAFTA called the USMCA, Ontario companies in the automotive sector specifically can reach 29 automotive assembly plants within a day's drive. As I mentioned before, there's about $1 billion in imports and exports every day between Ontario and the US, and there are 14 border crossings between Ontario and the US. In terms of other countries and other regions around the world, as I mentioned before, as part of Canada, there are free trade agreements with 1.7 billion consumers. And you can see there in the map highlighting, of course, the free trade with Europe through CETA, free trade with the US, and also the CPTPP agreement that Ontario, or Canada, sorry, has in Asia and in parts of South America. So one of the great advantages we have in Ontario is our skilled and growing workforce. This graphic just gives a little bit of information about how Ontario is a global leader in STEM education with 42,000 STEM graduates per year, so science, technology, engineering, and math. We have 6 universities in the global top 300 universities, including 2 in the top 25 computer science programs in the world, number 15 being University of Waterloo and number 25 being University of Toronto. And U of T, University of Toronto, is also one of the top 20 global universities. As well, Waterloo graduates, University of Waterloo, which is quite famous in the IT area, they are the 2nd most frequently hired graduates by Silicon Valley companies. In terms of general education of the workforce, Ontario is better than any OECD country right now, with 68% of the adults having had post-secondary education. That's university or our college system. As well, through Canadian and Ontario programs, you have the ability to bring in people into Ontario relatively simply through the Global Skills Strategy and the Global Talent Stream. So the Global Skills Strategy provides fast access to top global talent for companies, and the Global Talent Stream allows companies to receive what we call labor market impact assessments, which is what we need to bring in foreign workers, within 10 business days, and work permits within 10 business days. So Ontario also has its Ontario Immigrant Nominee Program, which allows these workers to have a pathway to permanent resident status within Canada. In terms of other competitive business advantages, well, in general, I would say what we talk about is the fact that Canada, and of course this is all a province, has the world's 2nd soundest banking system as rated by the World Economic Forum, and is rated, or at least was rated, I believe in 2018, as the 2nd most politically stable country in the world. Now, Norway, Finland, and Sweden are all tied for 1st, but we have a very high ranking in that area. In terms of general taxation, Combined federal and provincial manufacturing corporate income tax is 25%, and for businesses outside of manufacturing, it is 26.5%. And there are also significant research and development cost savings. More generally and more subjectively, Toronto and Ottawa rank among the top 20 cities in the world for quality of life. Getting back to taxes, our tax rate for manufacturing that is combined at 25% ranks sort of in the middle and below many our neighboring US states, such as Indiana, Michigan, New York, for example, but higher than some others, such as Ohio. I mentioned research and development savings through the SHRED program. A typical research and development expenditure of $100 within Ontario, companies will only be actually spending $50.44 after taxes. And of course, a little bit less important for Europe, because Europe, of course, also has very strong public healthcare systems. We have much lower healthcare costs than the United States, about 1/3 of the cost that you would pay for your employee healthcare compared to the United States. So now, as I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about some sectors. So just generally, we can say that Ontario has strengths in many sectors, including automotive, chemicals, environmental technologies, aerospace and defense, steel, financial services, information and communications technology, and life sciences. And of course, these slides will be shared with you afterwards, and you can see some of the details. But to drill down a bit, I'm going to talk about a few of those sectors. To start with, the Ontario technology sector. This graphic just shows the variety of companies, both international companies and homegrown Ontario companies, which are operating in Ontario, as it shows from Amazon down to ZTE, some of the huge international players, Facebook, Microsoft, Ubisoft, but then also some of our specialty Ontario, made in Ontario companies such as Christie Digital, Hootsuite, Myovision, for example. This graphic shows a little bit about where those companies are located. So really there are three main hubs within Ontario for information and communications technologies. So starting at the top right of your screen, of course, we have Ottawa, the capital of Canada, and also one of the bigger cities in Ontario. There are approximately 3,000 ICT firms in Ottawa, and they specialize in digital media, cybersecurity, wireless tech, telecom, photonics and optics, defense and security, data analytics, and software development. Now, Ottawa, of course, being the capital of Canada, there's a lot of government-focused ICT work, but as well, Ottawa has long been a hub in terms of telecom. GTA, which is at the bottom right of your screen, stands for Greater Toronto Area. There are approximately, well, about 15,500 ICT firms with strengths in enterprise software development, cybersecurity, robotics, telecom, technology manufacturing, mobile apps, digital media, social media, cloud, and supercomputing. And of course, well-known area for ICT in Ontario is Kitchener-Waterloo. About 600 firms with strengths in software development, satellite tech, e-learning, cybersecurity again, digital display, robotics, digital media and games, health informatics, imaging, cloud, and mobile apps. So one of the subsectors which is growing very quickly within Ontario is artificial intelligence. We have over 300 artificial intelligence firms and institutions. And Ontario has recently invested $50 million in something called the Vector Institute, which I'll talk about in the next slide. But just to give you an idea of some of the variety of AI in Ontario, we'll use as examples 4 companies operating in 4 different spheres. So in the retail area, we have Integrate.ai, which does a AI-powered platform for B2C enterprises. In health, there's Deep Genomics, which is actually doing a discovery of drugs and treatments using AI-based medicine. In the legal area, we have Blue Jay Legal, which is using artificial intelligence to make law more transparent and accessible. And of course, the well-known cybersecurity firm MindBridge, which is doing advanced fraud detection for enterprises. I mentioned the Vector Institute. That's a new independent nonprofit research institution dedicated to AI and focused on deep learning and machine learning. And it's a partnership between the Ontario government and the Canadian government, with private sector, academic, and the startup community contributing information and resources. And there's more than 30 companies that have committed over $80 million to support the Vector Institute. It was launched in March 2017. In terms of cybersecurity with Ontario, again, there are many, many firms, mostly clustered in the Greater Toronto area. But there are also a lot of work being done in the Waterloo area. And here we see three organizations that are operating this area. Of course, there's the Waterloo Cybersecurity and Privacy Institute, BlackBerry, which is now focusing largely more on software rather than hardware, and has become an expert in cybersecurity, and the Global Cybersecurity Resource Program, which provides entrepreneurs with cybersecurity expertise. Another subsector in IT, which is growing very, very quickly, is FinTech. This slide shows, it might be quite small on your screen, the logos of many, many of the FinTech companies across Canada, which of course it's centered within the Greater Toronto area. And the subsectors within FinTech, of course, include cybersecurity, mobile payments, RegTech, peer-to-peer lending, institutional platforms, FinTech for insurance, invoice billing and accounting, loans and credit, money transfer, and personal finance. As well, there's a lot of work being done in Ontario now on quantum computing. So the area in the Kitchener-Waterloo area has been dubbed as Quantum Valley. And in that location, we have two major institutes. One is the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics. It's the world's largest hub devoted to theoretical physics research. And we have the Institute for Quantum Computing, which is developing breakthroughs in quantum information science, both affiliated with Waterloo University. In terms of IT overall, if you're interested in this area, there are a number of associations and incubators. Communitech is a private-public innovation hub in Waterloo that works with over 1,400 companies. ITAC, or the Information Technology Association of Canada, is the industry association. Mars, which is an incubator in Toronto, located in downtown Toronto, offers advisory services and connections to talent, finance, customers, and more. There's the 111 incubator, that's home to a community of high-performing technology scale-ups, which is located in Toronto and Ottawa. The DMZ, which is affiliated with Ryerson University in downtown Toronto, which is a world-leading accelerator for tech startups, and Venture Lab, which helps entrepreneurs build high-growth, innovative firms. So now I'm going to talk a bit about manufacturing in Ontario. So manufacturing makes up approximately 12% of Ontario's gross domestic product and employs approximately 10% of the total employment within Ontario. In 2018, it was responsible for $98 billion in terms of GDP. And just an insight into why manufacturing is quite strong in Ontario and actually is growing stronger. Of course, since the big recession that started in 2008, and the rebounding economy in the United States after that has contributed to the growth of manufacturing in Ontario, as well as there's been, of course, lower oil costs and lower fuel costs over the last number of years. And we still have a quite competitive Canadian dollar. So all those support Ontario's economic growth in the manufacturing area. Manufacturing and its success in Ontario can be seen as really a combination of three things that we have within the province: a strong advanced manufacturing cluster, combined with a large ICT cluster, so information and communications technology, and combined with the strength of academia and research. One subsector within manufacturing, which is growing and very strong, of course, is robotics and automation, growing around the world. Ontario has a good variety of robotics and automation companies, starting with design all the way up to systems integrators. Over 350 companies operating in this area, including many of the world's global leaders. And you can see on the screen there examples of some of those companies. In additive manufacturing or 3D printing, because we have a very, very good potential or actual consumer base for those types of industries or those types of technologies, it's growing quite quickly within Ontario, particularly in metal additive manufacturing. So there are research centers at the University of Waterloo, including the Multi-Scale Additive Manufacturing Lab and the Laser Additive Manufacturing Lab. Although there are no manufacturers of high-grade 3D printers, industrial, within Ontario, most of the global leaders in this area have resellers within Ontario. In terms of support for R&D, there are two major organizations. One is Next Generation Manufacturing Canada, which is the industry-led advanced manufacturing supercluster. And the other is Tsunami, which is the Southern Ontario Network for Advanced Manufacturing Innovation, which is a network of colleges and a university who support advances in manufacturing. So now I'm going to talk about one subsector of manufacturing, which is extremely important in Ontario, and that's automotive manufacturing. So we have here in Ontario 5 global OEMs manufacturing automobiles. It is the #2 jurisdiction in North America, that is in terms of provinces and states, in terms of vehicle production. In 2018, we had 2 million units assembled in Ontario. So those are units from Fiat Chrysler, Ford, GM, Honda, and Toyota. This graphic just attractively shows some of the automotive models which are manufactured in Ontario. One thing we always like to note is the fact that even Lexus automobiles are manufactured in Ontario, and I don't believe there are Lexus manufacturers anywhere outside of Japan other than in Ontario. So that shows the high quality of the manufacturing being done in terms of vehicle assembly within the province. Of course, along with vehicle assembly, that means we have a very strong global auto supplier base with over 700 part suppliers in Ontario's, primarily Ontario's auto corridor, which goes from Toronto down through Waterloo and London, Ontario, down to Windsor, which is across the river from Detroit. There are 500 tool, die, and mold facilities, and about 70,000 people working within the supply chain. And Ontario exported about $16 billion worth of auto parts in 2018. Key specializations include tooling and mold making, EV and alternative powertrains, lightweight materials, connected vehicles and autonomous vehicles, and Industry 4.0. Once again, there is a strong, there are strong tie-ups between universities and companies in this sector or this subsector. University of Toronto has a partnership with GM, Toyota, Ford, LG, and others. University of Waterloo is working within its project called WattCar on advanced automotive research. The University of Ontario Institute for Technology has private sector partnerships with General Motors, Bombardier, and others. And as well, there are tie-ups with McMaster University, Carleton University, and University of Ottawa, which are both in the Ottawa area. Ryerson and York University, both in Toronto, who are doing partnerships more on the advanced connected car area, together with IBM, Bell, Huawei, and more. And of course, University of Windsor, which is just across the river from Detroit, which has private sector partnerships with Fiat Chrysler, Ford, and others. Another key sector in Ontario is financial services. So financial services account for approximately 10% of Ontario's GDP, and about 53% of Canada's financial services sector is located in Ontario. And there are almost 400,000 people working in this area in Ontario, with about 12,000 large and small financial services firms. So Ontario ranks 4th in North America in terms of financial services GDP, just after California, New York, and Texas, and 5th in terms of its employees working in this area. So this chart gives you an overview of how ICT and financial services interrelate. You can see on the left-hand side column different types of ICT services, ranging from platforms and software to data management and data analytics, transactions and cybersecurity. And then along the top row, the different types of financial firms, from banking to capital markets and asset management, insurance, and back office. So I'm not going to read through all of these firms, of course, but it gives you a good idea of who is working in each area, each of these 16 areas. In terms of location, through this slide, you can see that many of the firms, or most of the firms, are located in the Greater Toronto area, with about, this is about 110, these are fintech companies working in the Toronto GTA area. And in Ottawa, there are some companies as well in the Waterloo region. In terms of subsectors in the financial area, of course, there are banking, so retail banking. This slide just goes over the big 5 banks, all have headquarters in Toronto. And you can read more about those later on by looking at the slide. At the bottom left, you can see some of the international banks operating in Ontario. Of course, the major ones, HSBC, BNP Paribas, ICICI from India, and Bank of China. Again, just to talk about the importance of fintech and of 140 fintech startups located in the Toronto area. In 2017, Toronto was ranked 4th among the most attractive centers for fintech, and has one of the world's fastest growing fintech hubs. We see, of course, the future of finance is banking plus fintech. And this slide just goes over 3 of our major banks and their work in the fintech area. I'm going to move along a bit more quickly now, as we want to leave time to talk about trade at the end of my presentation. Cybersecurity, once again, very, very important within Ontario and in the financial area. Over 90 SMEs in Ontario focused on cybersecurity. Let's see, I would say one of the key firms, which is a little bit better known around the world, is Hurjavik Group, which is headquartered in Toronto, and it's the top privately held firm on our list. It was ranked 1st in the world as a private equity cybersecurity firm. Mobile payments, Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, Android Pay, all being used by the big 5 banks in Canada. And one thing interesting I haven't talked about is blockchain technology. So Canada has one of the 3 biggest hubs in the world for blockchain technology. Innovators such as Paycase and CoinSquare are both in Toronto, and both came from Toronto. We have something here called the Blockchain Research Institute, which supports the subsector. And the digital currency Ethereum was developed by Canadians. And this slide just shows the importance of Toronto as the financial services capital of Canada. And then I'm going to talk finally very quickly about the food sector, because I know that there are some people listening in who are operating in this area. So Ontario takes advantage of the fact that there's plentiful natural resources within the province, including a lot of fertile farmland, rich marine life, and reliable freshwater supplies. We have a strong regulatory and food inspection system within the province, and also, of course, within the country. And Ontario is home to many, many companies specializing in functional foods and natural health products, which provide global investors with an opportunity to develop global leading-edge products. Toronto has the 2nd largest food cluster in terms of jobs in North America. Ontario generates about $40 billion in revenue within its food and beverage processing sector. There are 50,000 farms operating in the province to supply this sector, and there are 4,400 food and beverage processing locations in Ontario, with over 100,000 people working in the sector. You can see there in the pie chart, of course, the big subsectors are meat and dairy. Bakery is also very large, and beverages. And also interesting, although it's not huge on the pie chart, there's a very strong and profitable animal food and pet food subsector within Ontario. So as this says, once again, we take advantage of Canada's free trade agreements and global links to export $14.7 billion of food products around the world, meat products, bakery, sugar and confectionery, grain and oilseed processing, and beverages. And again, there is a strong link between academia and this subsector, so the food and beverage subsector. Primarily one of the largest and most important academic institutions in this subsector is at the University of Guelph, which has the agricultural, and it's one of the leading agricultural and food research schools in North America, and it has something called the Guelph Food Innovation Center. Finally, another slide talking about the linkage with the world through free trade agreements. And a slide showing some of the international companies and homegrown companies which are operating in Ontario in the food and beverage subsector. So finally, I'm going to talk just briefly about my office and how we can assist potential investors or people who are interested in knowing more. We offer, in general, 6 types of information. So timely, customized business intelligence to help you make your investment decisions, including data on key business costs. Tailored insight on business immigration pathways, so including employee settlement services, talent partnerships with colleges, and early investment-specific assessment facilitation of incentives, so that is financial assistance available to companies. As well, of course, we can link you with local policies and local governments to talk about programs and certifications. We have customized Ontario tours. In the past, those tours were done in person, and we look forward to having those tours again once the COVID-19 situation, I suppose, has ended and things have normalized. And we offer access to local professional services such as legal expertise, commercial real estate, banking and financing, tax and financial planning. So that's the end of my part of the presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now and then pass the baton back to Delphine, and then I believe my colleague Rita Patlin will speak. So I'm just going to stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Marek. And yes, indeed, while Rita is sharing her screen, just a reminder to ask all your questions in the Q&A session. We will have 10 minutes at the end of this presentation. Over to you, Rita.
Thank you, Delphine. Good afternoon to all European attendees, and good morning to anyone located in Ontario. So my name is Rita Patlin, and I am one of the 14 international trade consultants within the International Business Growth Branch that is responsible for export programs and services. In the next couple of slides, I will provide you a quick update on the European Union and Ontario trade relationship, an overview of the export programs and services, and the ministry's presence in international markets. So let's start with some updates on the European Union and Ontario two-way trade relationship. In 2019, Ontario exported nearly $11 billion of goods to the EU and imported $34 billion, resulting in a trade balance of 45. These numbers exclude precious gems, primarily gold, which from 2014-2019 accounted for over half of Ontario's exports to the European Union and 2% of its imports from the EU. Exports to the European Union last year represented 4% of Ontario's total exports worldwide. The US still being Ontario's largest export market, which represented 80% of Ontario's total exports. And by country, the United Kingdom was the largest European country receiving Ontario exports. Now, on the flip side, exports from the European Union into Ontario represented 9% of total imports from all other countries in 2019. And Germany and Italy were the leading EU countries that exported into Ontario and ranked 5th and 7th largest exporters in comparison to all other European countries. The Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement between Canada and the European Union, or CETA, celebrated its third birthday this past September, and there's plenty to celebrate even at this early stage of the agreement. Exports are up overall, and many sectors have seen impressive increases. As you can see from the lower box on this slide, CETA has worked effectively to increase bilateral trade between Ontario and the EU region since its inception. Between 2018 and 2019, Ontario exports destined to the European Union increased by 20%, and imports from the EU into Ontario by 13%. This slide is just a quick glimpse of the top 5 classification of goods exchanged between Ontario and EU markets. On the export side, we again have excluded gold from the totals, which ranked as the #1 goods classification in 2019, and precious metals, which ranked 4th. Now, in the next couple of slides, you will get a better understanding of how Ontario works with exporters, foreign businesses, partners, and industry stakeholders, but it would be a shortcoming on my part if I did not first mention how COVID-19 has forced some changes to take place. This pandemic has had a significant impact on Ontario companies' international sales and operations. Travel, like many other countries, has virtually ceased, and many major trade shows and other international business development events are moving to an online format. Through its Digital Export Market Development Initiative, DEMD for short, the province of Ontario is designing programs to help businesses adapt to the changing global marketplace and to continue to grow through international trade. The government is using digital alternatives to both continue to deliver its core programming, to offer new services designed to meet the needs of companies during the economic recovery phase, and to continue to facilitate business connections, partnerships, and investment opportunities around the globe. We also have export specialists living and working in important international markets around the globe who can help arrange local business connections for Ontario companies and assist foreign businesses source for Ontario suppliers and partners. I'll go into more details in later slides. The Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade offers a range of programs and services and tools to help businesses compete in today's fast-changing global economy. The ministry also supports the growth of small to medium-sized businesses so they can connect with new export markets and customers, manage a network of international trade and investment offices in key markets around the world, organize international business missions to increase export and investment opportunities for Ontario companies, develop strategies for priority industries and sectors in Ontario, and build strategic partnerships and stakeholders within Ontario and internationally. So let's now have a closer look at some of these programs and services. The ministry organizes seminars, webinars, and workshops that are tailored to help Ontario's potential exporters, early stage exporters, and experienced exporters in foreign markets. On December 10th, for example, we are offering a workshop that will help Ontario companies prepare for a concise yet powerful presentation when pitching potential clients or partners in foreign markets, with an emphasis of doing this on a virtual platform. We typically organize around 75 export business missions per year. However, due to COVID-19, many of these have either been canceled or have turned into virtual export business missions. Sector-specific missions bring Ontario SMEs to international markets and are mostly anchored around international trade shows where companies participate as part of an Ontario or Canadian pavilion. These typically include networking opportunities and B2B meetings with potential clients. And as you can see in the sampling of sector-specific missions, most have moved to a virtual format. We just completed a virtual aerospace MRO mission to Poland, where 14 Ontario companies had the opportunity to virtually meet with Polish MRO manufacturers seeking new suppliers for their supply chain. And as you can see from the list, we have a few more scheduled to take place before the end of 2020 and others that are being planned for early 2021. The ministry also supports international engagement opportunities with incoming business delegations by showcasing Ontario's key sectors and innovation ecosystem through customized programs with the goal to create new investment and trade leads in Ontario. Strategic programming for inbound business delegations, which have been delivered online during this pandemic, can include knowledge sessions in which the ministry will provide an overview of local market conditions and on the related industry sector, as well as overviews of key communities, relevant companies, research innovation centers, and other appropriate organizations. The incoming buyer program can include B2Bs and B2 government meetings, and the ministry will work with the foreign organizer of the inbound mission to promote and coordinate logistics for the foreign delegates. One such event took place last week. This was originally planned as an incoming buyers program from Germany, with German utilities, I should say, coming to Ontario to learn about Ontario's energy market and meet with potential Ontario suppliers of technologies and services that could help the German utilities with some of their challenges in providing a stronger and more resilient energy system in their market. Given the current situation, the event became a virtual Meet the Buyer program in which industry experts presented on the energy system in Ontario and Germany and had Ontario and German suppliers pitch their products and services to an audience made up of German and Ontario utilities. I'm among the 14 international trade consultants that cover various international markets and sectors. For Europe, we have 3 consultants with the responsibility for the entire region, but for specific industry sectors. We work with Ontario exporters to provide one-on-one advice on exporting, assess their potential in specific markets, assist in developing their export strategy, and connect them with qualified contacts in foreign markets, and assist them in resolving market access problems. We also identify and share any export opportunities and economic, social, political issues that could affect their export journey. The ministry also organizes a number of webinars throughout the year. I have provided a few examples of past and upcoming webinars relevant to the European market. These can either be market or region specific, such as the one we offered earlier this year on EU digital platforms for exporters, or industry specific, such as the 2 you see that are currently being developed for early next year. As a foreign business, if you're looking to source for Ontario technologies and services, we can assist you in identifying export-ready manufacturers, service providers, and other types of partners located in Ontario. Now, to deliver these programs and services, I have just shared with you our network of international trade and investment offices that are located in foreign markets. And we also work very closely with a vast network of trade commissioners in Ontario and abroad. The ministry has 16 trade and investment offices located within Canadian embassies and consulates in 9 foreign markets. In Europe, we have 3 Ontario offices located in London, Munich, and Paris. One of the roles and responsibilities of an Ontario Trade and Investment Office abroad is to provide support to Ontario exporters interested in the market where they are located, but they also play an important role in raising Ontario's profile and build commercial relations with key global markets and attract and assist foreign companies, offices, and facilities to invest in Ontario and facilitate international research and innovation partnerships. I mentioned earlier that we also work very closely with Global Affairs Canada, the Canadian federal government agency responsible for managing Canada's diplomatic relations around the world. On a regular basis, the ministry will partner with their trade commissioners who are located in Ontario and in more than 160 cities worldwide to organize trade missions, help Ontario businesses navigate the complexity of global markets, find new opportunities, and connect with businesses around the world. Also, to help us further with in-market support, the ministry regularly identifies and partners with European industry associations, chambers of commerce, industry clusters and accelerators or incubators in order to connect Ontario companies with the right partners and that make up part of their networks and reciprocate information that is beneficial to all. As for partners located in Ontario, almost all European Union member countries and non-EU member countries have a consulate located in Ontario, and the ministry always welcomes the opportunity to work with each one of them. The Ontario government is regularly asked to help promote and support European delegations visiting Ontario and assists in connecting these with the right Ontario businesses and partners. When we organize outbound missions, they in turn are ready to help us identify critical partners in their respective EU markets or assist us in identifying potential partners for our exporters. One such great partner is, of course, the European Union Chamber of Commerce in Canada, with whom we are grateful for extending the invitation to present today. The final slide provides links to our online calendar and international trade international trade programs and events for Ontario businesses looking to export outside Canada, and a link for foreign businesses to search for upcoming Ontario export business missions to foreign markets, as well as international events taking place in Ontario, such as Collision, one of the world's biggest tech conferences. These listings will include a list of Ontario participants and their profiles and are another good source of business connections for you. We invite you to earmark and to visit the website, the lower website, on a regular basis. The Ontario government remains committed to creating opportunities for business, for the business community to help them remain strong and get back up and running during these unprecedented times. We're also ready to help you connect with export-ready Ontario manufacturers, service providers, and partners to help you remain competitive in your market and internationally and achieve long-term success. Whether you're looking for suppliers or partners in Ontario or looking at Ontario as a landing spot and your gateway to the North American market, we are here to help you. Please don't hesitate to connect with Marek for investment and partnership questions, or myself, or my other two colleagues responsible for the European market anytime. On behalf of the Ontario government, I would like to thank Delphine and the European Union Chamber of Commerce in Canada for allowing Marek and I the opportunity to give you a glimpse into what Ontario has to offer. We hope the information was useful, and we wish everyone good health and successful distance deal making. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rita and Marek, for this very deep information about Ontario. I actually have a first question. Of course, with COVID, we know that whether it's on the federal level, on the provincial level, or even in Europe, I mean, countries have to, or provinces, have to find a balance between supporting, of course, local economy, but also still sustain the export side in order to boost the economy. What's Ontario's strategy, and do you still see, even though the situation again we are in is quite not normal, do you still see EU companies coming to you, whether it comes for trade or investment? That would be my first question.
We definitely have, you know, an uptake on companies that still wanting to do business in Europe. We may have shifted a little bit more into the one-on-one consultation versus the trade missions. It's just because those, of course, have petered down. We did find that around August, September, virtual trade missions became the norm, obviously. But we're finding that there's still interest. And we're also, through our network of the Ontario Trade and Investment Offices and the Trade Commissioners, we're also finding that we're getting a lot more leads coming in, and those are being shared with Ontario companies. And then, of course, the partnerships that we have fostered in the past in foreign markets, they too are either providing us with leads, or there's still an interest in incoming emissions, just like the one from Germany, we still went ahead with the program, except that we connected everybody virtually. So on the trade side, definitely, it may not be, you know, focused more on trade missions, but certainly anything that is doable virtually.
I would say on the investment side, it's also been actually quite, in a way, pleasantly surprising that there hasn't been a great lessening of interest from Europe in investing in Ontario. There might have been, there was a small dip, I would say, during the early times of the pandemic, say in February, March, but things really picked up again, and we're still getting a lot of inquiries about investing in Ontario. Maybe because, Ontario, while it's suffering like many places in the world, things in Ontario have been, relative to other places in the world, have been handled relatively well. Most people would agree, and Europeans particularly, they see that, and you know, they recognize that things are in a relatively better state here than some other places. As well, I would say that although we're not, of course, and it's very difficult now to receive individual visitors from outside of Canada. In fact, it's almost impossible unless you already have a footprint here. There's a lot of Europeans participating in virtual trade shows, which are sort of, I would say, come from Canada, such as Collision or some of our automotive trade shows, or even life sciences recently. And they are connecting with Ontario companies and Ontario government officials and asking questions. The one thing we have right now is there are very few deals or things being closed, meaning that at the very end of the investment process, of course, is when someone comes physically, visits the province, signs the contract to either lease space or buy land or something like that. And that is very difficult right now. So we expect that, of course, to pick up once again once the pandemic situation normalizes.
Yeah. All right, thank you. The next two questions, I'll ask the questions together, even though it's not on the same sectors, even though it could apply. So where would you place the construction building sector among the active and successful activity in Ontario? And we also have a question on sustainability. What's the strategy of Ontario regarding, you know, green transition, green activities?
Rita, you're the expert in clean tech, so and green buildings, so if you want to talk about that.
Sure. Well, funnily enough, you know, the construction activity and the building sector in Ontario has not stopped. It has not been affected at all by COVID-19. There was a little bit of a dip back in March, but quickly the construction sites and of course the building sector supplying these projects still continues to flourish. And you know, you'll see cranes throughout the city, the province. It's quite impressive, actually. On the clean tech side, you know, we're committed, of course, Ontario is committed to clean energy and providing a good mix of energy. We have a very, very strong water, wastewater sector. We have a strong cluster of companies, and those seem, you know, we excel in smart grid technologies, storage, energy storage technologies. And on the clean tech side, at least for me and for as it relates to Europe, those are the two main subsectors that we focus on. So again, it would be on the energy side, it would be smart grid, storage, and then on the water, wastewater, basically any technology. We've always had a very strong cluster of companies and many of them export successfully internationally.
And I would say from the investment perspective within the construction area, yes, there's still a lot of foreign investment coming into the province and into Toronto particularly, and involved in both residential and commercial building. A lot of investment is driving the growth of the construction industry, or sustaining the construction industry within the province. In other sort of clean tech areas, and this is one area where actually Europe plays a strong role. We continue to see European companies opening up subsidiaries, or at the very minimum sales offices and branch offices within Ontario. So it's definitely a growth area.
Okay, thank you for this. I have another question, because when we think of CETA, we usually, of course, think of tariff barriers that are falling, but there's also many other opportunities within CETA, and one of them being government procurements. So for our audience, for those who are not aware, EU companies can actually participate in public procurement in Canada, and Canadian company in public procurement in Europe without actually being present in the country. So I wanted to know if you have this kind of, if you see this kind of project, or if you see European company taking advantage of being able to participate in government procurement opportunities in Ontario.
You know, I'd have to say that I think the procurement side, I don't have the stats as to how many companies are taking advantage, but I have to say that it's probably one of the slower moving parts of the CETA agreement. Yeah. And I think that is on both sides. It's there, and I think I personally think it's about dedicating someone who will continually look and seek out opportunities. And I think that's the main issue with procurement opportunities, because they're looking at procurement opportunities within their markets, but to do that internationally, it takes time. Yeah. We've offered webinars in the past, especially when CETA was first initiated, that showed, you know, what was available in the European market. And certainly I'm sure that in Europe they've done the same to show how to navigate procurement in Canada and in Ontario. But I would have to say, my only comment would be that it's probably the slowest moving part of CETA.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's what we also figure out. But indeed, we also had we also came up a few months ago with a guide on how companies could take advantage of government procurements here in Canada. Of course, targeted at EU companies. So you can actually find the guide on our website. I will ask one last question before we wrap up. We have a question about the skills. So what are the unique skills in Ontario that are differentiated from what already exists in the US, UK, or Germany?
Well, I'll talk briefly about that. And this is really from what we hear from businesses, both domestic businesses and international businesses, which are asking about Ontario. And a lot of the skills advantage in Ontario comes from the fact that we are open to the world. We are internationally open. And what that means is that within Ontario, we have a population from every country in the world that you can think of. And also we have linkages, because of that population, we have linkages back and forth. So that provides a lot of the very, very important soft skills that you need in business to make connections with international players, with other international businesses. So for example, if you come to Ontario and you're looking for experts, or you're looking for someone who has knowledge of another culture, how to export, whether it's to Europe or to Asia or to South America, or who has contacts in the United States, it's quite, it's relatively easy to find someone who not only has that connection, but also will have the specific knowledge that's necessary for your industry, whether it's life sciences or engineering or IT or anything like that. So I would say that is one of the key areas in which the skills are different in Ontario than they are in other developed countries. Rita, if you'd like to add to that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, what you said is definitely true. And I think on the trade side, a lot of the linkages that happen with Ontario exporters is the fact that they come from many different backgrounds. And so it's an easy step for them to connect with family or relatives or people that they know in their foreign market and start to do that two-way trade and enable the two-way trade. We're a very diversified economy in as far as cultures and people, and it certainly strengthens those linkages.
Thank you. Yeah, being new in Toronto, I can only I can only agree to this, and I guess it's also supported, just as you presented, Marek, with a strong immigration, of course, policy that can, of course, sustain all this growth. Okay, I think our time is up. I didn't have time to ask all the questions, but to the participants, please feel free to take Marek, Rita's, and her team contact, so you can carry on the conversation with them and talk about your project in Ontario. Again, to the participants, you will receive the presentation later today. And thank you very much, Marek and Rita, for your time this morning. I think it was very insightful, and I hope it will help to continue the growth between EU and Ontario projects.
Well, thank you, Delphine. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Vielen Dank. Merci.
Merci. Thank you very much. Have a great day
Bye-bye.
or have a great evening.
Thank you.